Papers. And now to our program guest, and this morning it's Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey, who must be delighted that since the beginning of the year the focus has shifted from the Coalition's failings to the government's. Joe Hockey, good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
And you must be delighted as well by some of the numbers that are out this week. National accounts show that the economy is growing strongly.
Well, we have said for some time now that the economy is performing better than the government has been saying, and one of the reasons why we've been saying it is the government seems hell-bent on sticking with its 2009 budget, where it anticipated an unemployment rate of around 8.5%. Now the unemployment rate is less than 5.5%, and the government is continuing with a massive spending program.
But that spending is helping to prop up the economy, isn't it? Credit where it's due. Public investment helped to keep the economy afloat last year.
Well, private investment was actually very strong in the last quarterly national accounts. And the fact of the matter is that the more the government borrows, the greater the upward pressure on interest rates. And it is getting incredibly difficult for small business in particular to borrow money and to borrow it at affordable rates. And the more the 800-pound gorilla known as the federal government is in the markets borrowing in competition with those small businesses, the harder it is to keep the economy growing at a sustainable level.
Yeah, well, interest rates went up this week, the cash rate to 4%, but that's lower than at any time during the Howard government. They are still at emergency lows, interest rates, so what's wrong with what the bank's doing now?
Well, in fact, for everyday homeowners, the interest rates have gone up higher than the movement by the Reserve Bank of the cash rate. And this is a very telling point. For small business in particular, interest rates did not fall by the dramatic levels that they fell for homeowners during the recent downturn. So small business, which hasn't had access to the $110 billion of equity capital market raisings last year, small business is finding it incredibly difficult, Chris, to get money and get money at an affordable rate. And this is a great challenge going forward, how Australia is going to fund its growth.
If the government cut spending, would interest rates necessarily fall?
Well, if the government cuts spending, it will remove some of the upward pressure on interest rates.
But it doesn't necessarily follow that interest rates would fall.
Well, just don't take my word. Take the word of the Governor of the Reserve Bank recently, where he said it is quite clear in both a House of Representatives hearing and in a paper delivered to other central bankers, he said it is quite clear there is a link between fiscal policy, expansive fiscal policy and upward pressure on monetary policy.
And he cautioned you against using that example in Australia. He cautioned you against using that example in Australia.
Well, he went on to confirm that the theory applies in Australia during the hearings. I might add, Kevin Rudd said it in 2008. You remember, one of the many wars Kevin Rudd declared was a war on inflation. And he said the best way to put downward pressure on inflation is to pare back on the Commonwealth budget. And if you do that, that will take upward pressure off interest rates. Kevin Rudd said that.
Well, given then that both sides of politics agree on that theory, where would you cut spending?
Well, firstly, we would have spent $20 to $25 billion less on the stimulus package. Everyone seems to forget that. That was a substantial decision from our perspective. Secondly, we would pay off the debt faster, and the starting point would be to privatise Medibank Private so that you can get $3.5 to $4.5 billion of proceeds and use those proceeds to get rid of some of the debt. The faster we pay off the debt, Chris, the better our economy is positioned for the demanding needs to fund our growth into the future.
But selling Medibank alone doesn't get you there. What savings would you make to the Commonwealth Government budget?
Well, we will outline all of those before the election, but I've already given you two great detailed examples of how we would have done it differently.
Do you think that it's enough to keep saying that the government should cut and then never specify where those cuts should come?
Well, we will do that when we have an opportunity to be in government. I think this mob doesn't know how to control spending. They've had blowouts on Medicare, blowouts on the PBS, blowouts on computers in schools, blowouts on school halls. They've had blowouts on solar panels. They've proven themselves incompetent in running a pink bat insulation program. How can you trust them with an entire health system of the nation?
Well, let's look at some of the programs. Would you cut back on the school spending?
Well, we will have a good look at all areas of expenditure, Chris.
So
all
you
areas.
might cut back on the school spending?
Well, you know, if you're in government, you have to have the courage to make difficult decisions that are in the national interest. And this mob have no courage, no policy courage at all.
Well, the ceiling insulation program has been much criticised. Would you cut that? Why restart that?
Well, we didn't support it in the first place.
So it should be
have
easy to
seen
cut
the government. Well, if the government got it so wrong with the first program, why should we give them a blank cheque for the second program?
So
Why
you
should
would
we do
cut,
that, Chris?
You would cut that spending.
Well, we haven't seen the details of what they're proposing yet.
Do you think that it's good enough for the coalition to keep saying that it wants some savings in government and not to identify what those savings are, and also when the government looks to make savings, to knock them back in the Senate?
Well, we want the government to keep their promises. Now, bear in mind, Kevin Rudd said he wasn't going to touch private health insurance. He's touched it twice. On the first occasion in the 2008 budget, when he had no economic reason to touch that area of policy. The second time he's done it again as a flagrant breach of his own commitment to the Australian people. You will remember, Chris, Kevin Rudd said he was going to fix the public hospital system by the middle of 2009 in his first term. Now his plan is to fix it in his third term. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister cannot be believed on his commitments.
Can we find any point of agreement on this between you and the government? Do you believe that the public hospital system needs fixing? Do the finances of the public hospital system need fixing?
Well, I'll tell you what. Canberra has 5,000 public servants in a Department of Health that does not treat one patient. Kevin Rudd's plan creates 200 new bureaucracies, and it doesn't add one single bed to the Australian hospital system. Kevin Rudd's plan is a plan for shifting funding responsibility. It's not a plan for improving accountability. And I say, as someone who has in his electorate the Royal North Shore Hospital, which has been the most contentious of all hospitals, if my child is in the emergency ward and something goes wrong, under Kevin Rudd's plan, who am I going to blame? Whose neck is on the line? Because it's not going to be Kevin Rudd's. He'll be long gone to the UN. It won't be a state health minister and it won't be a federal health minister. Who is going to be accountable?
But Joe Hockey, could we find a baseline to begin